It's amazing that you know that we're living rent-free in their head when they talk like that. I wasn't even aware that we were taking up so much space in his head. It was a delight for him to announce to the world that we're there. So Senator Reid, he's not all bad. Maybe things are starting to change. Too early to tell, but one very encouraging symptom, and maybe some of you saw it, there were pictures on the internet of stores in Hollywood with a sign that had been put up in the window, right out front, not hard to find at all, shoot back. And then somebody had been going to public trash cans, telephone boxes, other pieces of public property, and putting up the same sign, shoot back. In Hollywood, in West Hollywood, which is liberal. So maybe self-preservation, it could well be a lot of them are homosexuals or very sympathetic to homosexuals, and of course that was part of the targeting that was done in Orlando. Whatever the motive, they seem to be getting the idea that maybe a gun in somebody's hands who's being attacked is maybe a good place for a gun. It's been a long time coming, but I guess if there's anything good that could come out of the tragedy in Orlando, it's for them to realize that they and their friends are targets of nutjobs. And it wasn't a Gun Owners of America NRA member that did it. The guy that did it was at least a nominal Muslim. He was a registered Democrat. They had party registration in Florida, and I've seen the picture of his party registration record from voter registrar in Florida. A registered Democrat. That's the kind of person that commits these kinds of deeds. Have you ever noticed that some of the liberals are really almost out of control angry? Well, this was one. So when they get out of control angry, make sure the safety's off of your piece, you know, because you may need it. These people are not, they have anger management problems. Yet they want to govern us. I love it. I'm hoping that we're not going to have to put up with that, but frankly, the country has done so much to tell God to go to hell that I think we're not going to get out of this anytime soon, and we're not going to get out of it anytime easy. But all the more reason then for us to be armed if we're to protect ourselves in such a violent situation, a situation that has just bred violence and hatred. I guess the good news of that is that the liberals are in danger of losing one of their major allies, Muslims. They had identified Muslims because they had this amazing notion that Islam is peaceful. And any study of history will tell you that Islam is a religion of war, a religion of violence and hatred. Conversions in Islam typically are by force, very unlike conversions in Christianity, which are by persuasion. So there's such a huge chasm, and yet the left can't see it because they reject the basis of Western civilization. They hate America because they hate Western civilization. Have you ever wondered why liberals are so buddy-buddy with Muslims, even though Muslims want to kill all homosexuals? The common link is the hatred of Western civilization. That's where it's coming from. And of course the schools have done a marvelous job in making people ignorant of why, faults and all, flaws and all, America is still the greatest country in the world. Viva America! Muy bien dicho. Well, the good news continues We now have 12 states, and soon to be 13, that have what we call constitutional carry. Constitutional carry means you could have come here with a gun in your pocket, in your purse, without a permit to carry a concealed firearm. And after the 13 list that we think we'll close out the year with, I'm hopeful that we're going to be back in state legislatures and see this list continue to grow. I'm not expecting us, thank you. I'm not expecting us to see constitutional carry announced as the law of California anytime soon, but there's still a lot of the rest of the country, I think, that's getting the memo that this works. Freedom actually works. It's a kind of a strange notion. We're not taught that in school, but now we're actually seeing it. Alaska has had this kind of constitutional carry for over 10 years, and in that time their violent crime rate has actually gone down. So all of the scary predictions about what's going to happen when the government and some bureaucrat doesn't know whether you have a gun in your purse and whether you're suitable to put it in your pocket, that is proven to be nonsense. Bureaucrats are the last people in the world that are competent to judge something like that. And only a liberal can really believe that. And so as the country, I think, wakes up from some of the liberal stupor, and we're realizing that these people don't have the brains of a gnat, then I believe we're just going to see people say, bless your heart. I know you liberals think that, but we're going to do it this way anyway. And I think that's going to be more and more what we see. That's certainly what these state legislators have been telling their liberal buddies. My state of Virginia has a governor, I'm sorry to say, who thought it would be really neat to send the list of those with a concealed carry permit to the authorities in Washington, specifically the FBI, so that those names could be added in, basically to the criminal database. Obviously, if you want to carry a gun, you've got to be a criminal, right? Or at least that's the latent nature of anybody carrying a concealed firearm. And so off they went. He got spanked for that, but not after the names were sent. So I'm not sure. Hopefully our experience will be a warning to other states. And it's one thing to have a prohibition on that, but you've really got to take measures that make those names unavailable. And of course, the best way to make them unavailable is if they're not on any list at all. And that's what we call a constitutional carry. Senator Cornyn, who sometimes we agree with him a lot, and sometimes we disagree with him a lot, but at least on this point, he actually has the gold standard bill at the national level for concealed carry. And your legislators should be urged to support the Cornyn-Stutzman, House Representative Stutzman bill, because it provides for your concealed carry permit, and I know there are even a few people in this state that can get them, and you could travel to San Francisco, where you'd probably, on a double dog dare, not be able to carry concealed legally there now, but with the Cornyn-Stutzman bill and a Massachusetts permit in your pocket, you're good to go in San Francisco, Chicago, let alone any place with sense. And so this bill is going to do a lot to, I think, teach the country that people walking around with a lot of guns, or a lot of people walking around with guns, is not the scary thing that they've all been told. There's not going to be shootouts at the OK Corral. There's not going to be road rage shootouts. None of these things hardly ever happen. And they're going to see that more and more, even as the crime rates continue to go down in these states with constitutional carry. Of course, the ultimate reason for the government not telling us whether we can carry a gun concealed or carry it in any which way, or have a gun at all, is that the Second Amendment was intended to make it so that you and I can have a gun to tell the government that you've gone too far. And if you keep on going, that's it. And I told a lot of talk shows, that's what the Bundy Ranch showdown was really all about. That was an exercise of the Second Amendment. It was keeping the government under control. It was dicey, it was tense, but then that's the nature of guns. But the Second Amendment was alive and well in Bunkerville, Nevada. And so I think we should celebrate that as a Second Amendment victory, because we haven't had that many really prominent ones. One that happened that I point to often was back in 1947. It's called the Battle of Athens, and if you go home on Google, on YouTube, and put in Battle of Athens, well, that's not the name of the movie. That segment, that tail end of that movie comes up, and you can see a bunch of corruptocrats that have taken over a town, returning veteran, saying, not on my watch, and one night there's a shootout between the people with guns and the cops, and the cops realized there were a lot more of them with guns than there were of them. The shootout ended very quickly. To my knowledge, nobody was killed. I'm not even sure there were any wounded, but there were bullets buzzing all around through the cop shop, and that convinced them that it was over. And that was, then they left the ballot boxes in place. The ballots were counted, and not too surprisingly, the reform ticket had won, and the corruptocrats were finally thrown out of power. But that throwing out of power, that election, never would have taken place had it not been for the Second Amendment. So when you hear somebody saying, and it sounds kind of like a slogan, that the Second Amendment defends the First Amendment, refer them to the Battle of Athens, because that's exactly what happened in 1947 in Athens, Tennessee. So I guess if there's anything that I would leave on an action agenda item, other than explaining to everybody you can meet why we have a Second Amendment and my ability to use a gun in self-defense or even target shooting, as we're doing here today, is a collateral benefit. But the main reason we have the Second Amendment is because people like us are in government, and we have to watch them because they're just like us. But otherwise, I think we should take some heart that the idea of freedom is advancing, however slowly. It took 25 years for every state in the country to finally end up with a concealed carry system. And a lot of them fall way short. Probably we don't have to look too far to find one that falls pretty short of the Second Amendment. But at least on paper, now all 50 states have one. And the battle has been moving to constitutional carry. And I think that's going to lift all boats, because then the concealed carry states that are highly restricted, and even those that are not, are going to have to start coming to grips with the fact that, gee, maybe this system of registration, of permits, is not doing a whole lot of good, because we already know that in places like Vermont, to my knowledge, there's not a problem with the almost total absence of gun laws at the state level in Vermont. It hasn't produced gangs of Vermont thugs charging into New York neighborhoods and terrorizing the peaceful people of Brooklyn and Queens and so forth. So it seems to be working out pretty well for like 80 years in Vermont, and we're seeing it work out very well in places like Alaska, and in Arkansas, and Arizona, and Wyoming, and all the other states that have constitutional carry. So more and more, the question to anybody's state legislator is, isn't it kind of insulting to say that the people of this state aren't as level-headed as the people of all these other states? Right. What makes them so different? What makes us so much worse? Do you like being represented by people that you can't even trust? Do you want to represent us anymore? Maybe we should get somebody else who's not so scared of us and doesn't think we're so irresponsible. Those are the kinds of questions I think we can play with their minds with. But ultimately, we probably need to meet them at the ballot box and help them get a new career. And in the meantime, keep your powder dry and keep on carrying. Thanks so much. God bless you.